Pregnant at 57, she was kicked out of her home and slept in the rain until a widower saw her. Judith Parker never imagined that at 57, she would face the most humiliating moment of her life. After years of caring for her parents' home until they passed, she now found herself homeless, without family and carrying a life in her womb that no one believed was possible. The rain pounded her body as she instinctively shielded her 7-month belly. She had been there for 3 hours under the closed pharmacy's awning, trying to muster the courage to leave. Her sister's words still echoed in her ears like knives to her heart. "You're a disgrace to this family, Judith. A woman your age pulling this nonsense. Get out of my house right now." Beverly had always been different from her. Younger, prettier, she'd had everything handed to her. When their parents left the house to both sisters, Judith thought she'd finally have a safe place to live. But discovering the pregnancy changed everything. For months, Judith thought she was going through menopause. The nausea, the fatigue, the missed periods, all the symptoms seemed normal for a woman her age. It wasn't until her belly began to show that she went to a doctor. "Mrs. Parker, you're 6 months pregnant," said Dr. Richard, looking at her in shock. Judith left the office stunned. How was this possible? Gerald, her husband, had passed 2 years earlier from a heart condition. She had been alone so long she barely remembered the last time she... Oh yes, now she remembered. Michael, the accountant at the company where she worked as a secretary. They had met a few times after Gerald passed. He was married, she was vulnerable. It was just comfort, she thought. Never did she imagine it would lead to this. The cold water ran down her face, mixing with her tears. Her clothes were soaked, and she felt the baby move, as if bothered by the situation too. Judith closed her eyes and whispered a silent prayer. That's when she heard footsteps approaching. She opened her eyes and saw a man in his 60s, with graying hair, holding a black umbrella. He wore a beige overcoat and had a concerned expression. "Are you all right?" he asked, stopping in front of her. Judith tried to stand, but her heavy belly made it difficult. The man reached out to help her. "I'm fine, sir." "Just waiting for the rain to pass," she lied, trying to keep her dignity. "Waiting out here? You're soaked. You can't stay like this, especially not..." He glanced at her belly with worry. "You don't need to worry about me," Judith said, but her voice came out weak and shaky. The man studied her for a few seconds. There was something in his eyes she couldn't decipher. Compassion, maybe, or recognition from someone who had also suffered. "My name is Stanley Thompson. I live nearby. Would you like a place to dry off and have some hot tea?" Judith hesitated. Accepting help from a stranger didn't seem safe, but she looked around and realized she had few options. The rain showed no sign of stopping, and her back ached. "I don't want to be a bother." "It's no bother, Mom. My house is big and empty." "I'd be glad for the company," Stanley said sincerely. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now back to the story. After much hesitation, Judith agreed. Stanley shared his umbrella with her, and they walked 2 blocks to a middle-class home on a quiet street in Liberty Heights, Chicago. It was an older house, but well kept, with a small front porch. "Sorry for the mess," Stanley said as he opened the door. "Ever since my wife passed, I haven't been as meticulous with the house." Judith walked in and immediately felt the warmth of a home. The house carried the scent of lavender, and photographs were scattered around the living room. She noticed many were of a younger couple, likely Stanley and his wife. "Please sit here on the sofa. I'll grab a towel and make some tea," he said, disappearing down the hallway. Judith settled onto the soft couch and looked around. The house told the story of a shared life. Feminine touches were everywhere: embroidered cushions, well-tended plants, delicate curtains. It was clear a woman had lived there until recently. Stanley returned with a plush towel and a steaming cup of tea. "Chamomile. My wife always said it was good for calming nerves." "Thank you so much, Mr. Thompson." "You're very kind," Judith said, wrapping herself in the towel. "No need to thank me. Anyone would do the same." Judith knew that wasn't true. Dozens of people had walked past her during those 3 hours in the rain, and not one had cared. "Do you live in this neighborhood?" Stanley asked, sitting in the armchair across from her. Judith felt a lump form in her throat. How could she explain her situation without sounding irresponsible? "I was staying with my sister, but we had a disagreement," she said, choosing her words carefully. "I understand," Stanley replied, not pressing further. They sat in silence for a few minutes, listening to the rain drumming on the roof. Judith felt calmer than she had in weeks. "If you don't mind me asking, when is the baby due?" "In about 2 months," Judith said, gently touching her belly. "That must be exciting," Stanley said with a wistful smile. "Meredith and I always wanted children, but we weren't blessed." Judith heard the pain in his voice. This man carried his own scars. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Thompson. Life teaches us we don't always get what we want, but sometimes it gives us what we need," he said, looking at her meaningfully. The rain began to ease, and Judith knew she had to leave. She couldn't take advantage of his kindness. "I think the rain's letting up. I should get going." "Where will you go?" Judith didn't know how to answer. She had nowhere to go. I'll figure something out." Stanley studied her with keen eyes. "You have nowhere to stay, do you?" Judith lowered her head, ashamed. She couldn't hide the truth any longer. "My sister kicked me out when she found out about the baby. She thinks it's shameful for a woman my age to be expecting." "And where's the father?" "It's complicated," Judith said, feeling tears well up again. Stanley stood and walked to the window, watching the now gentle rain. "You can stay here tonight. Tomorrow we'll figure something out." "I can't accept that, Mr. Thompson. You don't even know me." "I know enough. I know you're a decent person going through a hard time, and I know I can't let a pregnant woman sleep on the street." Judith felt overwhelming gratitude for this man. It had been so long since anyone had shown her such kindness. "Thank you so much. I promise I'll leave early tomorrow and won't bother you further." "No rush," Stanley said. "Now come, let me show you the guest room." They climbed a softly creaking wooden staircase. The room was simple but cozy, with a single bed, an old wardrobe, and a window overlooking the backyard. "There are clean linens in the closet. The bathroom's just down the hall," Stanley said. "If you need anything during the night, just call for me." After he left, Judith sat on the bed and finally allowed the tears to flow freely. For the first time in weeks, she felt safe. Maybe there were still good people in the world after all. The next morning, Judith woke to the smell of coffee and toast. She went downstairs and found Stanley in the kitchen preparing breakfast. "Good morning, Mrs. Parker. Did you sleep well?" "Very well, thank you. It's been a long time since I slept so peacefully." "I'm glad to hear that. Have a seat, I'll pour the coffee." The table was set for 2, with an embroidered tablecloth, porcelain cups, and a vase of flowers from the backyard. Judith was touched by such care. "You didn't have to go to all this trouble." "It's no trouble. It's nice for me to have someone to share meals with," Stanley said, pouring hot coffee into a cup. They drank in silence for a few minutes. Judith couldn't remember the last time she'd had such a delicious breakfast. "Mrs. Parker, I was thinking, do you have any plans for today?" "Actually, I need to look for a job and a place to live." "What kind of work did you do before?" "I was a secretary at an accounting firm. I worked there for 15 years until I found out about the baby." "They let you go because of the pregnancy?" "Not exactly. I quit. I was so ashamed, and Michael, the baby's father, worked there too." Stanley nodded, understanding the delicate situation. "That must have been very hard." "It was. Michael is married. When I told him about the baby, he said I was trying to destroy his family." "And you? How do you feel about him?" Judith thought before answering. "I thought I felt something special. He was kind to me during a very difficult time in my life. But now I realize it might have just been loneliness." "Loneliness can make us do things we normally wouldn't," Stanley said understandingly. "You speak like someone who knows the subject." "I do. After Meredith passed, I felt very alone too. It's hard when you're used to sharing your life with someone, and suddenly you're by yourself." Judith felt a connection with this man. Both had lost their partners and were trying to navigate life without them. "How long has it been since your wife passed?" "It'll be a year next month. Heart problems, just like your husband." I'm so sorry. That must be very difficult. It is. But life goes on, and meeting you yesterday reminded me I can still help someone. At that moment, they heard a key turning in the front door lock. Stanley checked the clock, surprised. That must be my daughter Jennifer. She has a key, but she doesn't usually come this early. A woman in her 40s walked in carrying grocery bags. She had brown hair tied in a bun and wore business attire, clearly coming from work. Dad, I brought the groceries you asked for. She stopped abruptly when she saw Judith at the table. Jennifer, this is Mrs. Parker. Mrs. Parker, my daughter Jennifer. Jennifer looked from her father to Judith with confusion and suspicion. Dad, can I talk to you for a minute? In private? Stanley glanced at Judith with an apologetic look. Excuse me, Mrs. Parker. They left the kitchen, but Judith could hear the hushed conversation from the living room. Jennifer's voice was clearly agitated, though she tried to keep it low. Dad, who is that woman? What is she doing here? Jennifer, lower your voice. Mrs. Parker is going through a hard time. Dad, you don't even know her, and she's pregnant. Don't you think it's strange for a woman her age to just show up out of nowhere? She didn't just show up. I found her in the rain yesterday and offered her shelter. Dad, for heaven's sake, have you considered this might be a scam? Women like her take advantage of lonely widowers. Judith felt her face burn with shame. She discreetly rose from the table, intending to leave before the situation became more awkward. Where are you going? Asked Stanley, appearing at the kitchen door. I think it's best if I leave. I don't want to cause problems between you and your daughter. You're not going anywhere, Stanley said firmly. Jennifer, come here. His daughter appeared, her face flushed with anger, but trying to control herself. Mrs. Parker, I apologize for my daughter's behavior. She's worried about me, but she was rude. Dad, Jennifer, Mrs. Parker will stay here as long as she needs to. This is my home and my decision. Judith had never seen anyone defend her like that. She felt deep emotion, but also guilt for causing family trouble. Mr. Thompson, I really think it's better if... I don't want to hear it. You were left homeless because of prejudice, and I won't allow that to happen again in my house. Jennifer looked at her father in surprise. She hadn't seen him so determined since before her mother passed. All right, Dad, but I'd like to talk to Mrs. Parker, if she doesn't mind. Judith nodded, though nervous. Of course. Stanley glanced at both women and realized it would be best to give them space. I'll be in the backyard tending to the plants. Call if you need me. After he left, Jennifer and Judith were alone in the kitchen. The silence was tense. Mrs. Parker, I didn't mean to be rude, Jennifer finally said. It's just that my father has been so vulnerable since Mom passed. I understand your concern. I have children too. Had, Judith corrected herself. What do you mean, had? My 2 children passed away young, a car accident 10 years ago. Jennifer's heart tightened. She hadn't expected that answer. I'm so sorry, I didn't know. There's no way you could. That's why I understand wanting to protect your father. If I had my children alive, I'd worry about him too. Jennifer's defensiveness began to fade. There was something in Judith's sincerity that moved her. And the baby? Can't the father help? It's complicated. He's married, and when he found out about the pregnancy, let's just say he wasn't happy. And you? Are you happy? Judith thoughtfully touched her belly. At first, I was in shock. A pregnancy at 57 isn't something you expect. But now, I think this baby is all the good I have left in life. What about your family? My sister kicked me out, said I was a disgrace. Jennifer began to understand the situation better. This woman didn't seem like an opportunist, just someone truly lost and in need of help. I'm sorry for doubting you. It's just, no need to explain. You're right to protect your father. He's a very good man. Yes, he is. My mother always said he had too big a heart for his own good. Your mother sounds like she was special. She was. They were married for 40 years. He's lost without her. Just then, Stanley returned from the backyard carrying some flowers. How are things going in here? Better, Dad, Jennifer said. Mrs. Parker, if you'd like to stay, I don't object, but I'd like to help find a more permanent solution for your situation. Thank you, Jennifer. I don't want to be a burden." "You're not a burden," Stanley said. "And don't worry about permanent solutions yet. First, we'll focus on the baby." "Speaking of which," Jennifer added, "are you getting prenatal care?" "I was, but after I lost my job, the tests are expensive." "Dad, she needs urgent medical attention, especially with a high-risk pregnancy like this." "High risk?" Judith asked, alarmed. "Any pregnancy after 40 is considered high risk," explained Jennifer, "but with proper care, everything usually goes well." Stanley looked at Judith with determination. "We'll schedule an appointment with an OB/GYN first thing tomorrow. Don't worry about the costs." "Mr. Stanley, I can't accept that." "You can and you will. I won't let this child suffer for lack of medical care." Judith felt her eyes fill with tears. It had been so long since she'd felt supported by anyone. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. It means a lot to us just starting out. Now, back to the story. In the following days, Judith grew accustomed to the rhythm of the house. Stanley insisted she avoid heavy chores, but she helped with lighter tasks. She discovered she enjoyed cooking for him. It had been years since she'd cooked for anyone but herself. Jennifer began visiting more often. At first, there was still some tension, but gradually she warmed to Judith's presence. She even brought baby magazines and outfits she found on sale. "I found these adorable clothes at the mall," Jennifer said one afternoon, holding up a yellow set. "Since you don't know the baby's gender yet, I picked neutral colors." Judith was touched. "Jennifer, you didn't have to." "I wanted to. It's been ages since I had a reason to shop for baby clothes." Stanley booked the appointment with Dr. Williams, a respected obstetrician in the area. On the day of the visit, he insisted on accompanying her. "That's not necessary, Mr. Stanley. I can go alone." "I won't hear of it. You're not going anywhere alone while you're pregnant." In the office, Dr. Williams examined Judith carefully. He was a middle-aged man with graying hair and a gentle manner. "Mrs. Parker, I'll be frank. Your pregnancy is high risk due to your age, but so far everything looks fine." "Doctor, are there any specific concerns we should watch for?" Stanley asked. The doctor studied him curiously, wondering about his exact relationship with Judith. "The main risks are hypertension, gestational diabetes, and placental issues, but with close monitoring we can stay on top of it." "What kind of monitoring?" Judith asked. "Bi-weekly checkups, regular blood work, and more frequent ultrasounds. And as you near delivery, we'll likely recommend a C-section." Judith's chest tightened at the thought of the expenses. "Doctor, how much will all this cost?" "Let me check with my secretary, and I'll give you an estimate." Leaving the office, Judith was visibly worried. "Mr. Stanley, I can't let you pay for all this. You've already done so much." "Mrs. Parker, I can afford it. Meredith and I saved for years, planning to travel in retirement, but she left before we could. That money's been sitting untouched for a year." "But it's not fair." "What's not fair is a child going without care for lack of money. Meredith would haunt me if she knew I could help and didn't." Judith stopped walking and looked at him gratefully. "Why are you doing this for me? Why are you being so kind?" Stanley paused as if choosing his words. "Because when I found you in the rain, it felt like Meredith was telling me I still had something important to do in this life." 2 weeks later, during a routine checkup, they received news that would change everything. "Mrs. Judith, I need to talk to you about something that showed up in the latest ultrasound," said Dr. Williams with a serious expression. Judith felt her heart race. "What is it, doctor?" "The baby has a heart condition called a ventricular septal defect. It's a small hole between the chambers of the heart." "Is it serious?" asked Stanley, holding Judith's hand. "In most cases, these holes close on their own in the first few years of life. But in some cases, surgery might be needed." Judith felt the world spin around her. "Surgery? On the heart?" "Calm down, Mrs. Judith. We're not talking about anything immediate. The baby could be born perfectly healthy and never need surgery, but we need to be prepared for all possibilities." "And if surgery is needed?" Stanley asked. "It would be done when the child is between 1 and 2 years old. It's a common procedure with a high success rate." Judith was in shock. After all the hardships she'd already been through, now she learned her baby might have health problems. "Doctor, how much does heart surgery for a baby cost?" It depends on many factors, but it could range between 50 and 100,000 rays. Judith felt dizzy. It was an impossible amount for her. On the way back home, they were silent. Judith was devastated, and Stanley was trying to process the information. "Mrs. Judith, we'll face this together," he finally said. "How? You heard what the doctor said. 50 to 100,000 rays. I'll never get that kind of money. We'll find a way. I don't know how yet, but we will. Mr. Stanley, you've already done so much for me. I can't ask for more." "You're not asking. I'm offering." Judith began to cry. It was too much kindness from one person. "Why are you doing this? I'm nothing to you." Stanley pulled the car over and looked into her eyes. "You're wrong. You and this baby have become very important to me." That night, Judith couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about how her life had changed in just a few weeks. From a humiliated, abandoned woman, she now had someone willing to fight by her side. But she was also worried. She didn't want Stanley to spend all his savings on her. He'd already done enough. The next morning, she went to the kitchen and found Stanley making coffee as usual. "Good morning, Mrs. Judith. How did you sleep?" "Not very well. I kept thinking about yesterday's conversation." "Did you come to any conclusions?" "Stanley," she said, using his first name for the first time, "I need to be honest with you." He stopped stirring the coffee and looked at her carefully. "I'm listening." "I'm growing very attached to you, and that scares me." "Why does it scare you?" "Because I don't want you to feel obligated to take care of me forever, and also because I'm starting to feel things I never thought I'd feel again." Stanley stepped closer to her slowly. "What kind of things?" "Things a woman in my situation shouldn't feel. Pregnant with another man's child, living in the home of someone I barely know." "Judith," he said softly, "I'm also feeling things I didn't expect to feel again." They looked at each other for a few seconds, both vulnerable and confused about what was happening between them. "But what about Meredith, your wife? Meredith always said that if anything happened to her first, she'd want me to be happy, that I shouldn't spend the rest of my life alone. And the baby. It's not your child. It doesn't matter whose child it is biologically. If this baby is born in my home, under my care, it will be my child in my heart." Judith was overwhelmed with emotion. She never imagined she'd find love again, especially in the circumstances she was in. At that moment, the doorbell rang. Judith and Stanley stepped back, still processing what they had just admitted to each other. Stanley went to answer the door and returned with a serious expression. "Judith, there's a woman here who says she's your sister." Judith's heart raced. Beverly had found out where she was. "Let her in." Beverly entered the room with an air of superiority. She wore expensive clothes and had a look of disdain on her face. "So this is where you've been hiding, Judith?" "I'm not hiding, I'm living." "Living? You call this living? Taking advantage of a stranger's kindness?" Stanley stepped forward. "Ma'am, I'll ask you to show more respect in my home." Beverly looked him up and down. "And who are you exactly?" "Stanley Thompson, and this is my home, where Judith is welcome for as long as she likes." "How convenient," Beverly said sarcastically. "Judith, I need to speak with you, alone." "You can speak in front of Stanley, he knows everything." "Everything? Does he know you're pregnant with a married man's child? That you were fired from your job? That you don't even have money to pay for your own medical bills?" Judith's face burned with shame, but Stanley remained calm. "I know all that and more," he said. "I know your sister is a brave woman going through a difficult time." Beverly hadn't expected that response. "Judith, I came here because I have a proposal for you." "What kind of proposal?" "I'm willing to let you come back home, but there are conditions." "What conditions?" "First, you'll sign a document renouncing any claim to our parents' inheritance. Second, after the baby is born, you'll give it up for adoption." Judith was shocked. "Give it up for adoption?" "Judith, be realistic. You're 57, you have no job, no money. How will you raise a child, especially one who might need heart surgery?" "Beverly, this baby is my child." "This baby is a mistake you made, and you have a chance to fix it." Stanley could no longer hold back. "Ma'am, I think it's best if you leave my home right now. And who are you to speak to me like that? Just a lonely old man taking advantage of a vulnerable woman. "Beverly," Judith shouted. "How can you say that?" "Me? How can I say that?" "Judith, wake up. Do you think this man is doing this out of kindness? Men like him prey on desperate women." Stanley was visibly shaken by the accusations. "Judith, if you think there's any truth to what your sister is saying—" "There's no truth to it," Judith said firmly. "Beverly, you can leave. I won't sign any document, and I certainly won't give up my child for adoption." "Judith, you're making the biggest mistake of your life. If it's a mistake, it's mine to make." Beverly looked at the two people in front of her and realized she wouldn't convince her sister. "Fine, but when this house of cards collapses, don't come looking for me." After Beverly left, Judith and Stanley stood in silence. Her sister's words had left a heavy atmosphere in the air. "Stanley, you don't believe what she said, do you?" "Of course not, but I worry others might think the same thing." "What others?" "Jennifer, for example, the neighbors, the hospital staff." Judith realized Stanley was genuinely concerned about what people might think of them. "If this is bothering you—" "It's not that, Judith. I care about you, about your reputation. I don't want people speaking ill of you because of me." "What do you suggest we do?" "I don't know. Maybe we should keep our friendship more discreet until the baby is born." Judith felt a pang in her heart. After finally finding someone who loved her, now she had to hide that love because of others' prejudice. "If that's what you want, it's not what I want. It's what I think would be best for you." That evening during dinner, they barely spoke. Beverly's visit had created a tension that wasn't there before. It was Jennifer who broke the silence a few days later when she came over for dinner. "Dad, can I ask you something?" "Of course, sweetheart." "You like Mrs. Judith, don't you?" Stanley nearly choked on his food. "Jennifer, what kind of question is that?" "It's a simple question. I see how you look at her, how you worry, and I see how she looks at you too." Judith felt her face grow warm. "Jennifer, let me finish," she said. "When my mother was dying, she made me promise to take care of Dad, but she also said something else." "What did she say?" asked Stanley. "She said that if you ever found someone who made you smile again, I shouldn't stand in the way." "Meredith said that?" "She did. And you know what? It's been weeks since I've seen you as alive as you are now." Judith felt tears welling in her eyes. "Jennifer, I would never try to take your mother's place. I know that. And I also know Mom would be happy knowing Dad is caring for someone who needs it, and that person is caring for him too." "Thank you, sweetheart," Stanley said, moved. "But I have one condition," Jennifer said with a smile. "What is it?" "I want to be this baby's godmother." Judith and Stanley laughed for the first time in days. "Condition accepted," Judith said. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us newcomers a lot. Now continuing. The following weeks were calmer. Judith and Stanley grew comfortable around each other again, especially after Jennifer's blessing. They settled into a domestic routine that worked well for both. Judith woke early to prepare breakfast. Stanley had insisted she didn't need to, but she liked feeling she was contributing somehow. After breakfast, he'd go out to run errands, bank, pharmacy, shopping, and always asked if she needed anything. In the afternoons, they often sat on the porch to talk. Stanley shared stories of his life with Meredith, and Judith spoke about her lost children. It was painful but necessary for them to know each other better. Meredith loved gardening, Stanley said one afternoon, pointing to the flower beds. "She planted these roses. They're beautiful. May I help take care of them?" Of course, she'd be happy knowing someone is tending to her plants. Judith began spending mornings in the garden. She discovered she enjoyed working the soil, and the baby seemed calmer when she was among the plants. It was during one such morning that she received an unexpected visit. "Judith," said a man's voice behind her. She turned and felt her blood run cold. It was Michael, the baby's father. "What are you doing here?" she asked, slowly standing. "I need to talk to you. Can I come in?" "No, we can talk right here." Michael glanced around, checking if anyone was watching. Judith, you can't stay here. What do you mean I can't? People are talking. My wife has already heard rumors about our situation. And what does that have to do with me? Everything. If she finds out about the baby, my marriage is over. Michael, when I told you about the pregnancy, you said you wanted nothing to do with it. Now you come here to tell me where I can or can't live? Judith, be reasonable. I can help you financially, but you need to leave Chicago. Leave Chicago? Go to the countryside to another town. I'll cover your expenses until the baby is born. And after? After, well, a child needs a present father. Maybe you should consider adoption. Judith felt a rage she hadn't felt in a long time. Michael, I'll say this once. This baby is my child. I won't leave Chicago, I won't consider adoption, and I don't want your money. Judith, and if your wife finds out about the baby, that's your problem, not mine. You should have thought of that before. You're being very stubborn. I'm being a mother. Michael looked at her with frustration. Judith, if you won't be reasonable, I may have to take more drastic measures. What kind of measures? I could claim you're harassing me, trying to ruin my marriage. I could get a restraining order. Judith stared at him in disbelief. Are you threatening me? I'm trying to handle this as civilly as possible. At that moment, Stanley appeared at the front door. Judith, is everything all right? Michael eyed Stanley suspiciously. And who are you? Stanley Thompson. And this is my house. Ah, so you're the famous protector, Michael said sarcastically. Protector? Judith didn't tell you she has a history of getting involved with older men. Stanley looked at Judith confused. What's he talking about? He's trying to cause trouble between us, Judith said. Michael, I think you should leave. Judith, you have 1 week to make a decision. Either accept my offer, or I'll have to handle this another way. After Michael left, Stanley was still puzzled. Judith, who was that man? Michael Davis, the baby's father. And what did he want? Judith told Stanley the whole conversation. She watched his expression grow more serious. Judith, can that man really get a restraining order? I don't know. I don't know much about the law. I think we should see a lawyer. Stanley, I don't have money for a lawyer, but I do. I can't let you spend more money on me. Judith, if that man is making threats, we need to protect ourselves, you and the baby. That afternoon, they went to the office of attorney Nathan Goldstein, a lawyer Jennifer had recommended. He was a young man, around 35, who specialized in family law. Mr. Thompson, Mrs. Parker, I heard about the case from Jennifer. Can you tell me exactly what's happening? Judith recounted the entire situation, from discovering the pregnancy to Michael's threats. Mrs. Parker, could this Michael really get a restraining order against you? It's possible, but he'd have to prove you're actually harassing or threatening him. From what I understand, you haven't had contact in months, correct? Correct. I never reached out after telling him about the pregnancy. Then he'd have a hard time getting such an order, but there's another issue that concerns me more. What? If he's the biological father, he has rights to the child, and also responsibilities. What kind of responsibilities? Child support, for example, if you file for paternity recognition. I don't want anything from him, Judith said quickly. Mrs. Parker, I understand your feelings, but think of the baby. If he needs the heart surgery you mentioned, child support could help a lot. Stanley shifted in his chair, uncomfortable. Attorney Goldstein, is there any way for Michael to give up his rights to the child? There is. He could sign a document relinquishing paternity, but usually that only happens in adoption cases. Adoption? Judith asked. If someone else wants to legally adopt the child, a stepfather, for example, the biological father can relinquish his rights to simplify the process. Judith and Stanley exchanged glances. Neither had considered that possibility. Doctor, what documents would be needed for an adoption process? Mr. Thompson, to adopt a child, you would need to prove income, have a stable home, and, well, it would be advisable if you were married to the child's mother. The silence in the office was heavy. The word marriage hung in the air like an unspoken question. Let's think about all these options, Stanley finally said. On the way back home, they were quiet. Both were processing the conversation with the lawyer. Judith, what did you think of the discussion? Complicated. I never thought having a baby would involve so many legal matters. And about the adoption question. Stanley, you know I'd love for you to be this baby's legal father, but I don't want you to feel pressured. I don't feel pressured. In fact, I've been thinking about it for weeks. Thinking about what? How wonderful it would be to have a family again. You, the baby, a chance to start over. Judith felt her heart race. But for that to happen, we'd have to get married, Stanley finished the sentence. They stopped walking and looked at each other. Stanley, are you proposing to me? I'm considering the possibility. And you? I'm considering it too, but for love, not convenience. Judith, I love you. It took me a while to admit it to myself, but it's true. I love you too. But a marriage under these circumstances. What circumstances? Two mature people who love each other and want to build a family together. Judith smiled for the first time in days. When you put it that way, it sounds simple. Maybe it is simple. Maybe we're overcomplicating things. And what will Jennifer think? Jennifer has already given her blessing, and I'm sure Meredith would approve too. Stanley, are you sure you want to take on a baby who might need heart surgery? I'm sure I want to take on you and everything that comes with you. That night, they talked late into the night about the future. They decided they would marry after the baby was born, so Stanley could legally adopt the child. But first, Stanley said, we need to settle the matter with Michael. How? We'll make him an offer. If he signs the relinquishment of paternity, we won't file for child support. Do you think he'll agree? I think so. He wants to wash his hands of the situation, and we're offering exactly that. 2 days later, attorney Nathan Goldstein contacted Michael through a lawyer. The offer was simple. He would sign a document giving up all rights and responsibilities for the child, and in return, Judith wouldn't file for paternity recognition. Michael agreed immediately. He didn't even hesitate, attorney Goldstein said when he called with the news. He wants to sign the papers this week. What kind of man gives up a child so easily? Judith asked, hurt. A man who never wanted to be a father, Stanley replied. And maybe it's for the best. This baby will have a father who truly wants him. A week later, they were at the courthouse for the signing. Michael arrived with his own lawyer, avoided looking at Judith, and signed the papers quickly. It's done, he said before leaving without a goodbye. How can he be so cold? Judith murmured, stroking her belly. Because he doesn't know you like I do, Stanley said. Because he doesn't realize the miracle you both are. With the legal matter settled, they could focus on preparing for the birth. Judith was 8 months pregnant and growing more anxious. What if something goes wrong during delivery? She asked one afternoon. It won't go wrong. You're stronger than you think. And if the baby needs surgery right after birth? Then we'll do the surgery. Together. Stanley, are you sure you want all this? A pregnant wife, a baby with health problems, all these complications? Stanley knelt before her and held her hands. Judith, before you came into my life, I was just existing. Now, I wake up every day with a purpose. You and this baby have given me a reason to live again. But what if? There's no what if. We'll face everything together. You, me, the baby, and Jennifer. We're a family now. Judith was moved. After so many years of feeling alone, she finally had a real family. It was on a Friday morning that the contractions began. Judith woke up with a different pain, more intense than the backaches she'd been feeling for weeks. Stanley, I think the time has come. He jumped out of bed immediately. Are you sure? The contractions are 5 minutes apart. Stanley panicked for a few seconds, then pulled himself together. He grabbed the bag they'd prepared weeks earlier and helped Judith get dressed. I'll call Jennifer and Dr. Williams. Stanley, I'm scared. He stopped everything he was doing and hugged her. I'm scared too, but we'll get through this together. At the hospital, Judith was taken straight to the delivery room. Dr. Williams examined her and confirmed the baby was ready to be born. Mrs. Parker will proceed with the planned C-section. Everything will be fine. Doctor, what about the baby's heart? We'll have a pediatric cardiology team on standby. If necessary, the baby will be taken immediately to the NICU. Stanley held Judith's hand throughout the surgery preparations. I love you, he said, kissing her forehead. I love you too. Take care of our baby if anything happens to me. Nothing will happen to you. Both of you will be fine. Both? I'm sure it's a girl, and she'll be as beautiful as her mother. Judith smiled despite her anxiety. The surgery lasted 2 hours. Stanley and Jennifer waited in the lobby, nervous and anxious. Dad, everything will be okay, Jennifer said, trying to comfort him. I know, sweetheart, it's been so long since I've been this afraid of losing someone. You won't lose anyone. Judith is strong, and the baby will be too. Finally, Dr. Williams appeared in the lobby with a smile. Mr. Thompson? Judith is doing well, and the baby was born healthy. And the heart? We'll run some tests, but the baby is breathing well and crying loudly. For now, those are good signs. Can I see them? Of course, and congratulations, Mr. Thompson. It's a girl. Stanley and Jennifer hugged, overcome with emotion. When they entered the room, Judith was awake, holding the baby in her arms. It was a tiny little girl, but pink and lively. She's so beautiful, Jennifer said, stepping closer to the bed. Want to hold her? Judith asked. Jennifer carefully took the baby. The little girl opened her eyes and seemed to look straight at her. Hi, Princess. I'm your big sister. Stanley leaned in and stroked the baby's face. What should we name her? I was thinking Hope, Judith said, because that's what you gave me when I needed it most. Hope Thompson Parker, Stanley said. Perfect name. In the following days, they ran all the necessary tests on the baby's heart. To everyone's relief, the ventricular septal defect was very small, and the doctors said there was a good chance it would close on its own in the coming years. We'll keep monitoring it, the pediatric cardiologist said. But for now, she doesn't need any special treatment. A week later, they took Hope home. The house that Stanley had shared with Meredith for 40 years now sheltered a new family. Meredith would be happy, he said, watching Judith nursing the baby in the armchair that once belonged to his wife. I'm sure she is happy, Judith replied. Why are you so sure? Because she raised a man capable of loving a lost woman and a baby who isn't even his. Hope is my daughter. She may not have my blood, but she has my heart. 3 months later, in a simple courthouse ceremony, Judith and Stanley got married. Jennifer was the matron of honor and held Hope throughout the ceremony. Now we're officially a family, Stanley said, kissing his wife. The most unlikely family in the world, Judith laughed. Maybe the best families are just like that. Unlikely but true. 6 months later, they received an unexpected visit. It was Beverly, Judith's sister. Judith, can I talk to you? Of course. Come in. Beverly stepped inside and was visibly surprised by the transformation. The house was full of life. Baby toys scattered around, photos of the new family on the walls, the sound of Hope babbling in her crib. She's grown so much, Beverly said, looking at her niece. She's 8 months old now and perfectly healthy. Judith, I came here to apologize. Apologize? For the way I treated you. You were right, and I was wrong. Beverly, let me finish. When I saw you pregnant, all I could think about was how it would affect our family's reputation. But seeing you now, seeing how happy you are, I realized what matters isn't what others think. What changed your mind? My husband left me last month. He found out I'd been hiding debts from him for years, and when I needed someone in the family to talk to, I realized I'd pushed away the only person who truly loved me. Judith's eyes welled up. Beverly, you'll always be my sister. Even after everything I did, especially after everything you've been through, now you know what it's like to be alone and need help. The two sisters hugged for the first time in over a year. Judith, can I meet my niece? Of course, Hope, come meet your Aunt Beverly. Judith picked up the baby and introduced her to her sister. Hope smiled at Beverly, who melted instantly. "She's beautiful. She looks just like you did as a baby. Want to hold her?" "May I?" When Beverly took Hope into her arms, the baby grabbed her finger and wouldn't let go. "I think she likes you," Judith said. "Judith, do you forgive me?" "I already have. You're welcome here anytime." "And Stanley? Will he accept me into the family?" "Stanley is the most generous man I know. I'm sure he'll love having you as his sister-in-law." When Stanley came home from work and found Beverly playing with Hope in the living room, he was surprised but showed no hostility. "Beverly, it's good to see you here. Stanley, I want to apologize for how I treated you when we first met. No need. You were protecting your sister. I'd have done the same. Thank you for taking care of Judith when I failed. We take care of each other. That's what real family does." Beverly stayed for dinner, and for the first time in a long while, Judith felt whole. She had the husband she loved, a healthy daughter, a caring stepdaughter, and now her sister back. "You know something," she said to Stanley that night after Hope had fallen asleep. "What?" "If someone had told me 2 years ago that I'd be here today, married, with a baby, living in a house full of love, I'd have said it was impossible." "Why impossible?" "Because I thought I'd already lived all there was to live, that the good part of my life ended when Gerald and the boys were gone. And now? Now I realize life can surprise you at any age, that it's never too late to start over. Judith, can I tell you a secret? Of course. That night I met you in the rain, I was coming back from the cemetery. I had gone to visit Meredith's grave and asked her to give me the strength to keep living. And did she? She sent you to me. I'm sure of it." Judith nestled into her husband's arms. "Then we both owe Meredith so much." "We do. And one day we'll tell Hope about the grandmother of her heart she never met, but who helped build our family." A year later, on a sunny Sunday afternoon, they were all in the backyard. Stanley pushed Hope on the swing he had installed in the tree, while Judith and Jennifer prepared a family lunch. Beverly had moved to a nearby apartment and was now a constant presence in the house. "Hope is walking so well," said Jennifer, watching the girl take her first wobbly steps toward her father. "And the doctor said her heart is perfect." "The tiny hole closed completely," Judith added. "A miracle," Beverly said, "in every way." "Why every way?" Jennifer asked. "Because 2 years ago Judith was lost, I was alone despite being married, and Stanley was depressed. Look at us now." It was true. Everyone had found their place in this unlikely family. "Aunt Judith, can I ask a question?" Hope said, running into her lap. Judith laughed. The girl had only started speaking a few months ago and already knew exactly how to get attention. "Of course, sweetheart. What's your question?" "Why does Daddy have white hair and you don't?" Everyone laughed. "Because Daddy is older than Mommy," Judith explained. "And why don't you have white hair, Aunt Beverly?" "Because I dye it," Beverly replied, sparking more laughter. "And when will I get a little sister?" Judith and Stanley exchanged glances. That was a question that had been coming up a lot lately. "Why do you want a little sister?" Stanley asked. "To play with me, and to help take care of you when you get old." More laughter. "Hope Daddy and Mommy are already old," Jennifer teased. "But not that old. Grandma at school is much older than you." "Sweetheart," Judith said, "sometimes God gives us exactly the family we need, and our family is perfect, just like this." "But if a little sister comes, she'll be welcome too," Stanley added, winking at his wife. That night, after Hope fell asleep and the guests had left, Judith and Stanley stayed on the porch talking. "Were you serious about another baby?" she asked. "I don't know. Were you?" "At 59? That would be crazy." "Then it's crazy," he said, pulling her closer. "Stanley, do you know I love you more each day?" "I do. And do you know why?" "Why?" "Because you taught me that true love isn't like in the movies. It's the kind that grows slowly, that gets stronger in hard times, that chooses to stay even when leaving would be easier. And you taught me it's never too late to be happy, that good people still exist in this world. Judith, If you could go back in time, would you change anything? She thought for a few seconds. I'd change how I treated Michael. I wish I'd been more careful not to get involved with a married man. Anything else? No. Because if I changed anything, I might not have found you. And I can't imagine my life without you and Hope. Neither can I imagine mine without you both. They fell silent, listening to the sounds of the night and feeling the gentle breeze. Stanley, can I ask you something? Always. Do you miss Meredith? I do, but not like before. Before it was a painful emptiness. Now it's a tender missing, like she's still part of our lives, even though she's not here. Do you think she'd approve of our family? I'm sure of it. Meredith always said a house only becomes a home when it's filled with love, and our home overflows with it. Judith smiled, pleased with the answer. We know we'll face challenges ahead. Hope will grow up. She'll ask questions about her biological father. We'll deal with health issues as we age, but we'll face everything together, said Stanley, and that makes all the difference. It really does. At that moment, they heard Hope crying in her room. She must have had a nightmare, said Judith, standing up. I'll go with you. They climbed the stairs together and found Hope sitting in her crib, rubbing her little eyes. Mommy, Daddy, I got scared. Scared of what, Princess? Asked Stanley, scooping her into his arms. I dreamed you left me all alone. That will never happen, said Judith, stroking her daughter's hair. Mommy and Daddy will always take care of you. Promise? We promise, they said in unison. Hope smiled and snuggled between her parents. Can I sleep in your bed tonight? Of course, Princess. We'll all sleep together. They settled into the bed with Hope between them. The little girl quickly fell asleep, feeling safe and loved. Stanley, Judith whispered in the dark. Thank you. For what? For finding me that night in the rain, for not walking past like everyone else did. Thank you for accepting my help, for giving a lonely old man a chance to feel useful again. You were never just a lonely old man. You were always a good man waiting for the right person to share your kindness with. And you were always a strong woman waiting for the right family to share your strength with. They drifted off like that, the three of them together. A family fate had built through the storm. The next morning, Judith woke early as always. She prepared breakfast while Stanley and Hope still slept. As she set the table, she paused to look out the kitchen window. The sunrise painted the sky in gold and pink. The garden she now tended was in full bloom, fragrant and vibrant. She could hear Hope giggling in the bedroom, waking her father with kisses and cuddles. 2 years earlier, she'd been pregnant, alone, and hopeless, sleeping in the rain. Now she had a family who loved her unconditionally, a home full of joy, and a future brimming with possibilities. Mommy, where's breakfast? Hope called from the stairs. Coming right up, Princess. Judith, need any help? Asked Stanley, appearing in the kitchen with Hope in his arms. I don't need a thing, she replied, gazing at the two loves of her life. I have everything I've ever wanted. And it was true. After so much loss, so much pain, so many fresh starts, Judith had finally found her place in the world. A place built not on perfection but on real love, patience, and the courage to believe it's never too late to be happy. They ate breakfast as a family, planning their day, laughing at Hope's antics, simply savoring the simple, true happiness they'd built together. And if anyone asked any of them if they'd change a thing about their lives, the answer would be the same. They wouldn't change a thing, because every tear, every struggle, every moment of despair had been necessary to bring them here. Because sometimes the best things in life arrive precisely when we least expect them, wrapped in circumstances that seemed like the worst possible. And sometimes a rainy night can be the beginning of our greatest happiness. End of story. Now tell us what you thought of this touching story. Do you believe Judith made the right choices in accepting Stanley's help? Share in the comments where you're watching from, and if you know any similar real-life stories. Your opinion means so much to us. Don't forget to leave your like if the story touched your heart, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you won't miss other stories that will move you. Thank you so much for your company.